C5 Insight is a Microsoft partner that plans, builds, and supports solutions in Dynamics 365, Teams, SharePoint, and the Power Platform. Contact us to modernize your business today.
Welcome, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about this idea of CRM in the C-suite, how to get your C-suite engaged, but how to get your C-suite to be more successful at running the business, and how to help them engage in such a way that they help you guide your project to success. And interesting that Allison, by the way, mentioned the 365 Leadership Conference, Leadership Summit a couple of moments ago. This is actually a session we will be redoing there. This is kind of our dry run for it. We're going to record it. So if you're our live audience, hey, welcome. If you're watching this recorded on YouTube, same thing, welcome. But what I'd really urge you to do is to consider sign up for Dynamics Con, sign up for Leadership 365 Leadership Summit, because 365 Leadership Summit, it is content just like this. It's not the content around how to do stuff with the products and all that. That's important, but that's Dynamics Con. That's more technical in nature. 365 Leadership Summit is more about better project management, better data quality, better C-level engagement in your project, better sales process design, all those things that are really, really important to do, but people don't tend to talk about them at the technical conferences. That's all that we're going to talk about in that day and a half. And it's the only time we know of per year that you can get your leadership team engaged and get them exposure to that kind of content. So let's dive into this. If you're going to join us there, you might hear this a little bit there again, but we'll probably make some changes and improvements as we go along. So one thing to know about CRM projects in general, and this is not about Dynamics, this is just about customer relationship management projects. And the reality is those projects fail more or less about as often as they succeed. Some would say even more often. I can tell you from our own personal experience at C5 Insight, right around 70% of the clients that come to us for the first time are actually coming saying, we need help. Something's off the rails with our customer relationship management project, and we need help getting the train back on the tracks and running smoothly again. And that can be technical issues, adoption issues, project management issues, partner issues, the list goes on and on. We'll talk a little bit about some of those today. But this is one of the reasons why C-level engagement is so important, because these projects are not guaranteed to succeed. It's not like an accounting project, right? Or it's not like putting email in where people just have to use it to get their jobs done. The whole idea around a customer relationship management project is you're changing people's behavior to help create a better customer experience that leads to longer lasting, more mutually beneficial and profitable customer relationships. But you can keep doing the same things the old way and not adopt the solution. Changing behavior is really, really challenging to do. And CRM, you really need to be cognizant of that and focus on that as a practice. And you need to make sure it works. It needs to actually, changing behavior needs to be the right thing to do. And that means the system itself has to work well too. So really, really important. CRM, buying software and having a good project plan, that does not guarantee your success with CRM. You need your CRM, your C-level suite engaged. Now, why do CRM projects struggle? Lots of reasons. I went through some of those a minute ago, but let's talk about some specific reasons now. CRM projects can really struggle when the C-level actually leads a project. That is a little bit counterintuitive, right? A lot of organizations talk about, we want to get C-level buy-in, right? We want the CEO, the COO, the CFO, the CIO, the EIEIO, whatever the O is, it's a good thing to get them engaged, and that is true. But if they take too much of a hands-on leadership role, what we have found over our history is that's actually destructive. That's actually takes things out of the hands of people who need to help guide a lot of the more tactical parts of the project. So, and we learned that lesson the hard way ourselves. We kind of grew up the way most people did and thought, hey, wow, we've got the CEO deeply engaged in this project with us. That's great, right? It's a really good decision maker, and they can kind of cut through the red tape and make things go faster. But that has actually turned into a red flag for us. Over-involvement from the most senior levels of the organization is actually not a good thing, and it can lead to struggles or even to failure. On the other hand, on the other side of that scale is the idea that what if the CXO completely delegates the project and is invisible? This too can lead to CRM struggles. So that leaves this gap here, right? It's like, well, I can't be involved, but I can't not be involved. What's the right balance? And the reality is that word balance, That's what it's all about. It's somewhere in between. It's the right level of engagement without being an overly controlling leader and without being completely checked out, engaging at the right time and place to actually make it work. In fact, I just stole my thunder from the next slide here, right? So when the CXO, whether that's the CEO, COO, CIO, CFO, whatever it is, when they're engaged in influencing the project, that's the first thing that's important. But the other thing that's important is when that CRM solution goes live, that they're actually a consumer of that solution too. So they don't go, hey, great project, hope everybody uses it. I got my job to do now. It now becomes a part of their job. It makes them a better CXO, right? I can run the operation better. I can understand our financial situation better. I can run my sales department better. I can, whatever those things are, right? So it's influencing the project as it moves along to fruition. And as it moves into fruition, actually become a consumer of the information that's managed in the CRM solution to do your job better. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how the C-suite, when they do this right, in our experience, how they have learned to influence CRM and how they have learned to make CRM not just a user tool, not just a sales, marketing, and service tool, but how they've actually made it a leadership tool for sales leadership, service leadership, marketing leadership, and overall business leadership. All of those are incredibly important. Allison already introduced me, but here's the quick skinny on me. My name is Jeff Abels. I actually started this firm, C5 Insight, over 20 years ago. Written a few books, helped others write a few books. I'm a Microsoft MVP, which basically means I'm a volunteer for one of the most profitable companies in the world. I'm not sure how they pull that off, but I spent a lot of time learning about their products and doing this kind of stuff, educating people about what they do. And on the right-hand side, that's the important stuff, right? That's my why. So my wife and I are empty nesters. There's our whole little clan right there at a recent get-together with both of our grandkids, both of our grown daughters, both of their husbands, and my wife and I. We love riding a motorcycle together when the weather permits. It's about 20 degrees out right now, so not so much right now. And we love enjoying fine spirits together, whether that be wine, bourbon, or craft cocktails when we can. And that's our little empty nest friend down there in the lower left corner. Her name is Rudy. All right. So enough about me. Love to get to know each of you a little bit better over time as well. Reminder to everybody, by the way, if you have questions, use the Q&A button in Teams to ask those questions. You should be able to submit those questions. And I know we'll be posting a few links there as well. So if you want to hit those links about the upcoming events, that's a great place to look. All right, so here's our agenda. Hit this a couple of slides ago. Let's dive in now, and we'll start by talking about how does the CXO, how do the C-level leaders in an organization help to influence the CRM project itself, right? Whether you're implementing something for the very first time brand new, or whether you're improving it, trying to get things back on track or whatever, how do they help to actually guide that project to success by being an influencer without being overly controlling? So our two things here are, number one, they help with the why. Number two, they help with the plan. That doesn't mean they define these completely themselves, but it means this is where they have a lot of influence. They exercise that influence to help guide things along. So what do we mean by why? When it gets right down to it, the C-level executive really only has two jobs. The first is process, right? It's the idea of how do we do things in a consistent, quality, and scalable way so we can grow the business. The second job the C-suite has is the exact opposite, change. How do I identify things to do differently in order to grow or even to survive? And the why is really what helps them guide all those things along. Why are we here as a company? Why are we actually doing this project? The interesting thing is this research done by Jane McConnell a number of years ago. She does a lot of research around digital workplace. And whoops, I'm not sure why that slide automatically advanced. Let me see if I can pause it there. Jane McConnell found that there are 5 things that help deliver successful digital workplace change. And at the top of that list that I can't get to stay still for us here is this idea of a sense of why, right? We've heard some of this about, know your why is really important. But notice on the top 5 things, and there are many more than just those 5, having your team understand why we are doing this, absolutely the most important thing. And no one can define the why. No one else is empowered enough to define the why than the C-suite. So being engaged in the project to actually help explain why we're doing this. And by the way, why is nuanced, right? It's not just Well, we're doing this because we want to create more revenue. Okay, that's great, but that might not be meaningful to everybody in the organization, right? Why is it important to me as a sales manager? Why is it important to me as a customer service rep? Why is it important to me as a marketing coordinator? Why is it important to me as a manager or an executive? There's lots of different dimensions of why. So why isn't just one sentence? It's a long-term program, but it's really, really, really important if you want to drive success and you want to drive adoption, that people in your organization understand truly why we're doing this. Why are we going through this change together? Why am I being asked to change my behavior and do something new? Here is a super simple way that that can start. For many of our clients, particularly the rescue ones, remember I said about 70% of our clients are rescue when we first get started with them. For many of them, this is what they've named their project. Oh, we're doing the CRM project. Now, what does that mean? When somebody hears that, what does that sound like? It sounds like technology, right? It sounds like we're going to get a piece of technology and we're going to do a technology thing because everyone's doing it, because we just need to do it, right? But it doesn't necessarily speak to what are we actually trying to do? What is it that we're trying to drive here? So defining the why, that starts at a granular level, but it bubbles up quickly to say, what are we actually naming this project, right? So this is not prescriptive. I'm not saying rename your project customer engagement. I'm saying deeply understand your why and name your project accordingly. Perhaps even change the name to sub things as you go on, right? There might be more of a sales focused name for a while. There might be more of a customer service focused name for a while. There might be more, the list goes on and on. That little list of things that scrolled by there though, that was kind of comparing the before and after. And it all comes down to this idea of, are you going to be focused on technology? Are you going to be focused on people, right? So the first one talks about, oh, we have to do technology. The second one talks about, no, we're going to do this thing as a business. We're going to create this experience. We're going to improve this metric. We're going to do this thing that actually helps us become a better business, not just to do technology. And then you stop focusing on how do I deal with technology, and you start focusing on how do I achieve the mission that this name, that this why has just explained to me. Incredibly important. And a lot of people, I get blank stares when we talk about this. What I can tell you is we have never had to rescue someone because they spent too much time defining their why, right? So it's hard to overdo this. It's hard to overthink it. In fact, it changes. You're not going to get it right the first time. The best way I can explain it is think about trajectory. When you're first starting, you might think, this makes such a little difference, right? I got to get to work right now. Leadership is putting pressure on me to get certain things accomplished by certain dates. And I really don't have time to add this to my list of things to do. So I'm just going to put my head down, get in the weeds, and start working. And you head off on a trajectory. If defining the why makes a trajectory go from 1 degree of difference to 3 degrees of difference at the beginning, that feels nominal. That feels like nothing. You can't even as a human being sense that you've had that much of a change in your trajectory. But when you're crossing the ocean or when you're going across country, it's actually going to make a difference in terms of hundreds or thousands of miles in terms of where you arrive at the end of that journey. Knowing your why and naming your project, it's about trajectory, and it's unbelievably important. I can't overemphasize it. Now, if you're thinking, well, what is our why? How can I get started on that definition? Let me submit this to you for consideration. If you know C5 Insight, you might have heard of the idea of the luck principle or being powered by luck. And what that is something we came up with many years ago, where we realized this is fundamental to every human relationship, whether you're looking at it life on life, one-on-one, or whether you're looking at it at massively scaled human relationships with one business trying to do business with hundreds, thousands, or millions of relationships all at once. So the why behind this is we want to help our organization to listen better, right? Listening means we actually hear what people are saying to us, and we write that information down in our memory. As human beings, we put it up here in our head. But as a company, that memory, that's called a database, right? We're putting it all into a database. And that memory includes things like, what did they say in that conversation I had with them last? But it also means, did they click that email? Did they buy that product? Did they make a return? Did they complain to customer service? All of those are part of the listening process. And you have a centralized database to capture all of that wisdom, all of that knowledge into one central database. So then you can understand it. Understanding is an analytical process, right? As humans, we try to do what Stephen Covey says, right? He said, hey, don't listen with the intent to respond. Listen with the intent to truly and deeply understand the person you're engaging with. We do that kind of in real time in our brains. But in business, when we're trying to scale it, we need to take that database and we need to be very intentional about data science behind this and say, let's do the right reports, let's run the right analytics, let's segment this correctly, let's build the right predictive models so we can deeply understand our customers and create better relationships with them. And when we do that, then we start building processes to make better connections. So connect is the process stage. That's the idea. Improve and develop processes that help reach our customers where they are, doing the things that they want to engage with us in, becoming more customer led instead of trying to always be the one pushing and forcing the customer. And the last step of that is know. Back to data science, back to analytics, right? Now we're saying, how did that work? What are my key performance indicators? What's working? What's not? How do I continuously improve so I can now go back through that loop and do it better and better each time? So listen, understand, connect, and know. That's the big picture why for why everybody does CRM. We want to do those 4 things better than we've ever done them before and continue to improve how we do them again and again and again. Again, don't just do what I'm saying. This is not a prescription. This is an idea. It's a great conversation starting point. A few of our customers have actually adopted this and said, this is exactly what we want to do. Others have said, this is great inspiration, but we're going to carve out a few pieces of this and mix it with some of our own things to make this work better. The last thing on that list, by the way, number 5 is what we call good luck. And that is your why. That is your corporate why, right? Luck is why you're doing CRM. Good luck is why you exist as an organization. And you want to connect what you're doing with CRM to that, right? We're running our business because we're a nonprofit and we want to create this. We're running this business because we want to empower and enable other businesses. We're running our business because we want consumers to have better healthcare coverage. Whatever that is, connect that to what your overall business mission is to empower your people to be more excited, more connected to what you're doing, because people want to do things for a bigger purpose than just, we want to make more money, right? We all know nowadays that like life is way more important, way bigger picture than that. Is it important? Sure, but it's not the only thing. So think about your why, right? I spent a lot of time on that and I could spend a lot more time on it. In fact, it's all we did today. And you left right now and said, I'm going to go and spend the next couple of months really getting our team together and defining that. This would have been an amazingly productive session for you, right? But we're going to go on and talk about a few other things. The next thing is this idea of having a plan. And when leaders hear this, they tend to think something like a very traditional plan, right? Because when you think about legacy technology and legacy projects, it's the project plan, right? It's kind of like, okay, let's put all the steps together and we're just going to start executing this plan to get stuff done, right? We're going to build something together. We're going to have a plan to do it. There is a place for that, but that's not the place to start. And when you think about that little picture we have back there with kind of a before after, I love this quote that someone in our organization threw out there at some point, and that's this idea of, look, we are going down a country road every day, right? We've gotten really comfortable with it. We know where the bumps are, we know where the curves are, but we can't go very fast on it. We can't travel 2 cars at a time on it. We're not going to move very efficient on it. And now we want to do this new thing, right? We want to create this digital workplace, and we want to have a super highway now. We want to be super productive. You are not going to transform that country road into a super highway by just paving the potholes or even just by widening the road. You need a whole different way of thinking, a whole different approach. So as you think about that, the planning process has a lot of different things that you need to think about. Let me put it to you this way. As a leader in a business, you are almost certainly doing an annual plan. If you're not, you have bigger issues than what I'm talking about today to deal with. You're almost certainly doing an annual business planning cycle, right? What are we going to try to accomplish this year? And you probably do things like we're going to look 10 years out, 5 years out, 1 year out, and then we're going to have quarterly plans and those kinds of things. All that's incredibly important. But are you doing the same with your CRM project? Because it doesn't sit still. So you need to think the same way you think about business planning, think about that with CRM planning. And that means a big picture, a roadmap. This is changing fast. You can't come up with a 12-month project plan in Microsoft Project and say, that's it. Once I've ticked off every single one of those tasks is done, we'll be done with that and we can move on to the next thing. Because I guarantee you, your customers are going to change. Your sales process is going to change. You're going to learn new things as you implement CRM that's going to make you go back and go, well, now that we know this, we have to rethink how we're doing things. And of course, technology is going to change and your competitors are going to change. So this needs to be very much a living process. So start with, instead of a project plan, very detailed tactics, start with a roadmap. Where are we going in general? Where are we starting? Where do we expect to end over what period of time? And then start to put together your smaller project plans to execute steps in that roadmap, knowing it changes so much that at the end of a year, you're going to come back to that roadmap and say, let's get out of the weeds for a little while. Let's rethink the roadmap. And now let's rethink what it's going to look like for the coming, we like to say 18 months, because if you only say 12 months, you tend to kind of get stuff done while you're waiting for budgeting and all that stuff. And all of a sudden, you're kind of in this limbo period where nothing's going on and you're trying to get your bearings again. So go for about a year and a half at a time when you do your annual planning, so you don't wind up with gaps where you're trying to fill in some openings in people's schedule. Okay, so that's the influencing CRM, right? Very simple. So great way, if you are not a C-level executive and you're here, that's where you want to engage your C-level executives, right? And generally, they have energy around those conversations. The ones who are kind of going, hey, I want to overly control, that's a little bit challenging. You need to work on that. But the ones who say, hey, I signed the thing, I signed the project plan, you guys go execute it and let me know how it goes. You want them engaged. And those two things help us define the why and help us look at this plan and help us develop this roadmap together. Not the detailed project plan, but the roadmap. Help us do that. Influence that, contribute to that, and then we will be empowered to go execute from there. That's what you want to pull your C-level executives into, because they should have energy around that. Then you can get deeper into the weeds outside of that. Okay. So now you've got a CRM solution, and maybe some of you are doing both of these at once, right? In fact, almost every client we work with is. You're doing annual planning, you've got something up and running, but you're also kind of trying to always improve it. So when you've got something up and running, how do you help your C-level executives now say, I can be a better leader by using this thing that we've invested in? It's not just something people do, and I hope it's helping our bottom line. It's something I'm using in my job, if not every day, close to every day, to do things better, to make better decisions, to have a better insight into our business. And when you think about the things that a C-level is concerned about, what we run into is these things, and this is actually kind of the prioritized order we run into most often, although it may not feel like that to the day-to-day people working in the company. But C-level folks are worried about people generally first, whether it's the people inside of their business or the people that their business exists to serve, their customers. Then they're worried about change. I mentioned that earlier, right? This idea of change is hard. And if you never need to change, you don't need C-level executives very much, right? They're the ones who often have to help drive the change. So what is the right change, and how do I get people to drive that change within our organization? Really important thing that C-level is working on. And the third thing, of course, is revenue. Hey, look, if we're not making a profit, it's like a human without a pulse. Maybe we don't think about our pulse every day, but if we don't have one, we've got a really big problem. Same with revenue and profitability, right? So those are the three things. Let's talk about how you can help your C-suite address all three of these concerns better if they become users, if they become owners, if they become beneficiaries of what's going on in the CRM solution.
Struggling to leverage Microsoft Enterprise solutions? At C5 Insight, we understand the intersection between technology, business, and people. Contact us to learn more.
People first. So there's a lot in this one word, right? Finding and retaining and growing leaders within the business. Top priority of nearly every C-level executive. I can tell you it's incredibly painful if they have a good leadership person and they lose them, right? That's really expensive and challenging to behave to replace that skill set. Things like succession planning and managing turnover, also really important to executive. But then there's customers, right? There's your culture as it relates to them, because your people are your culture, and your culture is what creates customers. How effective are executives using CRM to meet those kind of people-centric goals? Because it can absolutely be used to do that. So as we think about the people within your company, think of this as being in four categories, right? There's leaders, there's management, there's front lines, and then there's customers. And there's opportunity and value for every single one of those. So as leaders think of leaders, first of all, they think of themselves as a leader. And part of this is, how do I, as a leader, replicate myself, clone myself, mentor people so that they can become leaders of the organization, so that I can give up responsibilities and I can spend more time doing things like running the company instead of being run by the company. And so someday when I as a leader need to move on, there's a line of succession there. There's people there who are ready to step in and take that role. Well, helping to lead and manage the CRM project, that is a ripe field for developing leadership, especially since it's a challenging, it's an incredibly important project, but it's much more challenging to drive change behind CRM than other projects. If people are figuring out how to do that, they are probably very good candidates for future leadership in the organization. And then there's the management team. They're the ones who are hopefully mentoring to become part of leadership at some point in the future. Your customer facing business managers, they're the ones who should really start to own the project. Maybe they own pieces of it. Maybe they own phases of it. Maybe it transitions from one to the other. Maybe you have a steering committee made up of them that all participates in this together. But they're the ones who are actually helping to run the project day to day, and it's helping to groom them as managers. They're also the ones who should look to CRM as a solution to help them run their actual team meetings, right? So it's not a tool for my front lines, right? My users, hey gang, please use this because it'll help us do our job better. No, you as a manager are actually running your weekly sales meetings, your weekly customer service meetings, your weekly marketing meetings, looking at the information that's available directly inside of the system. And if it's not in there, it means your people aren't adopting it correctly and you're not going to run your meetings well. It will help to drive that. And then there's your front lines. One of the things we found is incredibly helpful if you take the time to do it. This is not easy, right? It's one of the things we find again and again is these concepts are simple. Simple is almost never easy, right? So this is not difficult to understand, but making it happen in your organization can be challenging. It's not easy to do, but it's simple. One of the simple things is everyone should have a number, right? Every CRM user should have a number, at least one number, and hopefully not a whole lot more than one number, right? So what is that number for you? Number of calls made, number of appointments held, customer satisfaction number, number of incidents resolved. The list goes on and on, but a number so you can start looking at those numbers to help people say, how are you doing? How can I help you improve? How can I coach and mentor you? How can we improve as a company so we create better customer experiences, more loyal customers, higher margins, faster sales speeds, all of those things that you bought CRM to do in the first place. And then enable your people by looking at what they're doing and spending time investing in having them not have to do the things that a quote, not real, but a robot can do for them. I can't tell you how often when we get into these situations where we're helping a new client recover from something that's failing, we look and say, this CRM system you have, it's another place they have to key stuff into. It's not really saving them much time. It's just like another reporting tool. So they're double, triple entering information into multiple systems to get their jobs done. Nothing makes us feel disrespected as a human being if you're saying, you are of so little value that I am not going to invest in automating a simple to automate process. I'd rather pay you to do it 2 or 3 or 4 times because you're a cheap resource to me. The computers cost more. The technology costs more for me to do it, right? So not only does that help you respect your people and drive employee loyalty, it helps to unleash them to be the best that humans can be instead of being a mundane thing, taking something out of the inbox, doing it, and putting it into the outbox. You want innovation, you want creativity, you want leadership from among your people. You have to unleash them to be able to do that. And then the fourth one, which is the one people most often seem to overlook, but it's the reason that you got your CRM solution, and that is you have customers, right? So how are you going to better engage your customers? One of the first things that I say, and I think I'll say this actually again in a couple of minutes, is don't ask for information about customers from a system that's not CRM. If you're saying, hey, for me to really get all my reports I need to run my business, all of those are coming out of my accounting system or my ERP system. And I'm not diminishing that. That's there for a reason. And there's important reports that should come out of that as well. But if that's where 100% or even 85 or 90% of your business decision-making information is coming from, you're doing it wrong. There should be rich information about your customers that doesn't exist anywhere except in your CRM system. And you should be asking that questions about, who are my customers? What do they want? How are they changing? What do they like and dislike about us? What are my opportunities to improve? Your ERP system is not going to have that information in it. Your CRM system, if you built it correctly, will have that, and it will help to drive change across your organization. I can tell you, if you want to drive adoption like crazy, if you're a CFO, start saying, hey, I can't do my financial forecast the way I want to anymore because it looks like the sales team is not updating the sales pipeline the way I expected them to. It looks like the The customer service team is not updating information that helps me predict operational change the way I need to. It looks like we can't predict marketing outcomes the way I'd like to because marketing isn't getting all their information into this machine the way I need to look at it to get information out. Suddenly it becomes much more real to people, right? And I don't mean that in a negative way, beat people up about it, but I mean, as you start to go, this is a mission critical solution for us to make decisions to run the company, people understand that and their behavior will start to change. All right. Second up is this idea of change, right? This goes by a lot of different things. Some people talk about this idea of adoption when it comes to change for CRM. Some people talk about behavior change. Change management is kind of the global term I like to use for it, whether you're trying to drive change around adoption or just change in general. Remember, two things that an executive is always worried about is process. How do I do certain things consistently so I can build revenue, build margins, and grow my business? And then change. How do I predict what's going on in the future? How do I innovate? And how do I get my people to do things differently once I see the need for that? CRM can have a huge impact on helping you to drive improved change. This is so important to the point that I believe that the ability to actually drive change might be the most critical differentiator in the future, right? You all probably know, if you're watching this recorded or live, there's all sorts of talk about all this technology that's going to change what our jobs look like in the future, right? I'm an optimist. I don't think it will overall reduce the number of jobs, but I think it might change the shape of what we're doing in our jobs day to day. So much of what we're used to having to do as a business is now well understood, well defined, and being automated, even automated in very creative ways through things like AI, that the ability to actually drive change, the ability to help our people, lead and guide our people in changing their behavior might be the most important corporate skill for surviving and growing in this century, right? The folks who don't learn to do it, they might not exist anymore by 20, 30, 50 years from now. The folks that do it well, they might be ahead of everybody else. So important, in fact, that if you get the slides afterwards, this orange flyout over here is actually a link to a video we've got hosted, I think, in YouTube. So you can probably search for it and find it, where we just talk about this idea of change management and how to do it. But to help with it a little bit, let me give you a couple of examples. This 2x2 grid is kind of a simple decision-making tool for thinking about changes. So if you think about the left-hand side of this where it says customers, new and existing. So that's sort of, hey, is this strategy having to do with getting new customers, or does this strategy have to do with working with my existing customers? And then across the bottom there, you see products and services. And is this about developing some kind of new product or service offering, or is this about somehow otherwise enhancing or cross-selling products and services that we already have? So let's look at two examples from real life here. This first one is actually the division of a financial services organization that we work for. And essentially they were in the business-to-business commercial lending process. They had actually developed a CRM system where they had learned to carefully manage their pipeline and processes in it. Because they did that, they were actually able to look at some of the forecast numbers coming out of their CRM system and see a downturn coming far ahead of when they otherwise normally would have. In fact, when they looked at competitors, when a big change came, it was a couple of years ago, when there was a market-wide change that really impacted them, they actually saw it coming and they repurposed things a little bit. They changed their products and services a little bit. They focused on their existing customers. They developed new products and services to say, since these aren't working and the marketplace is changing, let's roll these things out. When a big change came, they got hurt. They had to do a few layoffs, but it was very small. Their competitors in the same marketplaces had massive layoffs, losing almost that entire division because all of a sudden they woke up one day and said, these numbers we've been getting out of our ERP system, suddenly they're turning down. But the folks who are looking at it in their CRM system said, this is predictive of what's going to be happening in our ERP system 3, 6, 9 months into the future, and we can pivot faster and respond better to change, keeping profits, maintaining relationships, and not having as much pain in our organization. This next one is actually from a professional services firm, a regional accounting firm, and exact opposite end of the chart. This actually goes back to COVID. So what happened with this particular organization was overnight, their pipeline was disrupted with almost no advance notice. So although they were using their CRM solution pretty well, COVID hit, and that wasn't sort of a, hey, we see this gradual thing going on in our pipeline. It was all of a sudden almost everything stopped. But what they were able to do, because they're large enough to have a pretty large database, They actually went in and researched and said, look, we are still seeing traction among these smaller marketplaces, these particular types of companies. Companies are providing information security and location security and health services and stuff like that, actually started really increasing their dependency on them, asking them for help. So they're able to proactively say, look, we've got this great product and service offering. We're not reaching all the customers that need us for this. So let's go find new customers that look like the small segment that continues to work with us. And suddenly they became the envy of their peers. Literally, their peer groups were saying, what have you done? Because our business is shrinking. Your business is growing right now. How did you do that? They did it because they had good information about their customers in their system. They could analyze that and pivot faster to respond to changing circumstances. So think about change this way. This information is from Harvard Business Review. I've quoted it a lot in the last couple of years here, but it strikes me as very true, and it comes from a third-party source. So Harvard Business Review says 81% of organizations are weak in digital management, digital leadership, or both. Well, what does that actually translate into? Well, for the 19% that are not weak, they actually show absolute positive revenue growth. Go back one slide for some examples of what that looks like, right? And digital means a lot of things, right? It doesn't just necessarily mean your CRM system. It might mean your collaboration system, your document management system, your business intelligence reporting system, all of those things. But CRM is, of course, a really big instrumental part of that. So there's an absolute difference for those who have engaged leaders and managers. Now, I want to talk about definition here again to beat this horse up a little bit more. That 19%, they're not leaders and managers who sign off on a project plan. They're leaders and managers who are digital natives, who say, these digital tools, I'm going to use them to be a better leader. I'm going to use them to be a better manager. It's not something I just approve. It's something I actually do, and I lead by example to help lead this company into change. Those ones see revenue growth. How have they done it? How have they driven change? The two things Harvard Business Review says they've done is they have found a digital coach. They've found that partner to come alongside them and say, you've gone to the top of this mountain that's littered with a bunch of dead bodies that haven't made it all the way up a number of times before. Be my trusted guide to help me get to the top of the mountain. And one of the things they do, going back to planning, they have a roadmap. They've developed a clear digital vision. Okay, the last area to look at together here is this idea of, well, what about revenue, right? And obviously, we've talked a lot about that already. We'll talk a little bit more about that. A lot of people would say, you'd better have revenue. This is the reason why you got your CRM system. Easy to say, simple to say, not always easy to do. How do you connect the dots to make that happen? So let's look at how, as a C-level executive, you can help to connect the dots to actually turn it into a better revenue generation machine. In fact, my coworker who's on the call with us today, Tricia Desso-Cox, actually wrote a book about this called Revenue Engineering. And the concept behind it is, just like a product can be engineered, revenue can be engineered too. But if you're going to do it, you need some certain things in place to make that happen. So if you want to really dive deep into that, you can check out her book, Revenue Engineering. I'm going to hit the very, very top level of this. The first thing is, most executives get the idea that, hey, if I'm going to have good revenue, I have to have good people who are generating that revenue for me, right? All the contributors to creating customer loyalty, customer purchases, all those things. So that little picture there actually comes out of a book, The Challenger Sale, that talks about 5 different personality types and how they play into that. So most executives have already bought well into, I've got to have the right people if I'm going to have a good revenue generation machine. And then they think the next step is, now I get technology, right? I invest in Dynamics 365. I invest in CRM thing because people plus that technology, that's going to give me results. And what I'm here to tell you is, if that gives you better results than the people alone, that's luck. And I don't mean powered by luck. I mean lowercase, you got lucky, right? This is not how it actually works. The missing element here that many miss and don't pay proper attention to is process. Right? You can't just have people in technology, because most people actually aren't, who use CRM technology, they're not tech first people. They're people, right? They want to connect with people. They want to build relationships. They are people first human beings. And that is a good thing. And you want to enable and empower them, but they will not naturally go to technology and figure out the processes that they want to use there. They need you to help them develop those. And here's a quick tool for it. Luck principle, powered by luck, comes up again. At every stage of their process in creating new relationships, serving customer relationships, marketing to customers, every stage of those processes, how are you helping them to listen to the customer better, understand them more deeply, create processes so you can connect with them in a results-driven manner, and know what the results are so you can continuously improve. If you want to think of that in a different way, we call that the 4Ds. How are you collecting the right data? How are you making better decisions? What are the deliverables you're bringing to the customer at the right time? And what are you doing to develop and enhance that process over time? And again, there's the book. If you want to go grab a copy of that on Amazon, that dives way deeper into this. This is an incredibly important part of the revenue generation process. And the good news is the technology helps you to develop, automate, and continuously improve those processes. But it doesn't have them out of the box, right? It's not a GPS. You don't get in the car when you turn on the technology and it says, I'll tell you how to get where you want to go. It takes a lot of contextual understanding of who you are, where you are now, and where you want to go in the future to develop those processes, and then configure the solution to handle those, and then help your people with the change management to adopt those processes and the technology. I mentioned this before. Another important part of revenue is stop asking your ERP your CRM questions, right? One of the things that we've come to realize is this. You've probably heard of the term BHAG, right? So those are those gigantic goals that might take multiple years to accomplish. Like John F. Kennedy's probably famous for the most memorable BHAG of all time. We're going to put someone on the moon and bring them back to Earth safely within the next decade, right? Giant BHAG, right? Can't be done. And yet, we're able to pull it off over 10 years. BHAGs are important. But from a human behavior standpoint, squags are actually much more important. What is a squag? That's actually something we came up with at C5 Insight when we saw how many organizations were frustrated with not creating enough behavioral change among their people. A squag stands for a small, quickly attainable goal. And it rhymes with BHAG to make it easier to remember. Some people call these things KPIs, key performance indicators. And that kind of fits too. We came up with our own term because what we find is very oftentimes KPIs actually don't live up to the full spirit of a squag. Let me explain. A KPI for me might be how many pounds have I lost, right? Maybe I have a goal overall if I want to get fit and I want to lose some weight. And so a KPI for me is what's my weight, right? Has my weight gone up or down in the last week since I took my weight last time? That's a KPI. I don't really have full control over that KPI. What I do have full control over is how many times did I raise my pulse this week? How many workouts did I do and of what time and of what type? That's a squag. It's a small, quickly attainable goal. I have almost 100% control over attaining that goal without any other help. Now, I might choose not to. My priorities might be off. I might feel like circumstances are such that I can't actually attain that goal, but I can change it immediately if I want to, right? So I could wake up this morning, I was like, you know what? I got right to work. I didn't work out this morning. But tomorrow morning or even this evening, I can change that. I have 100% control over changing that. If I'm working in a company, I can change how many calls I made today. I may not be able to change how much revenue I actually contributed. I can change how well trained I am on the system to help resolve customer problems. I might not be able to fully control customer satisfaction overall. Squags are things that I can control myself. And I can tell you there's unbelievable power in these if you take the time to do this simple thing, but it's complicated to make it happen. It's not easy. And actually start giving everybody a number and changing those numbers periodically to say, we're going to focus on this for now. Let's improve it. Now we're going to focus on this. Let's improve it. And the real secret sauce is if you get your people engaged in that conversation and they start to help come up with the squags themselves so that they're starting to adopt not only this idea of how do I do this better, but how do I think about the business? And that's where you start to get not only engagement, but creativity and innovation and ideas from the front lines who sees exactly what's happening and can start to make a measurable difference in the business overall. So stop asking your ERP CRM questions, start to define what your squags are, get your whole team engaged in that. And then one very tactical thing, but it's something we see so few people doing, and the ones who do it, we actually see this driving behavior change like crazy, and that is your forecast, your future-facing forecasts. So most organizations, when they do forecasting, they say something like, we did X last year, we're going to grow by Y, so we're going to do X plus 12%, 15%, 20% this year. There's a time and place for that. I'm not saying completely ignore that. That's usually your annual plan. But in your quarterly planning, part of that cash flow forecasting that's coming out of your finance office, that should be done in partnership with the sales team who's actually looking at the pipeline and can say, I can tell you quarter over quarter about how we do because we do a pretty good job of maintaining the pipeline. And now we can refine those numbers for our quarterly goals quarter over quarter and set expectations correctly. So we don't disappoint leadership because we didn't make 20% this quarter because you know what? COVID happened and everything blew up. And so now we've got to do things differently, right? Or a competitor did something different that we weren't expecting, whatever it is. Short term, your CRM has numbers in it that help you predict reality much better than just well, we did this good last year or last quarter. Let's see how good we can do this quarter. So build that into your overall financial and corporate planning process, and it will drive change throughout your organization. All right. So those were our two things with our 2 ways to influence CRM, helping to lead and guide the project, and 3 ways to lead with CRM, using CRM as a tool to make your C-level executives better C-level executives, make better decisions, have better information, be better engaged with the organization. Lots of other stuff we can do here. I'm gonna click over real quick. I don't know if anything came into Q&A. I don't think I see anything in here. I think we've got a few relevant links there. So if you want the few links I shared today, I'm glad to get them to you. There's my contact information. Just ping me with an email. If you want to engage with C5 Insight, of course, we would love to hear from you. And remember, if you want to go deep dive into revenue engineering, there's a book on Amazon called Revenue Engineering by Tricia Desso-Cox. Go grab a copy of that for yourself. If you want to dive deep into the luck principle that we talked about multiple times, there's a book called The Luck Principle by myself on Amazon. You can go grab a copy of that book as well. Thank you, everybody, so much for coming. I hope you found this insightful and helpful.